do my best to stay rooted behind this podium to make sure everybody can hear me okay. Before we get into the order of the day, we're going to start with a land acknowledgement. So I'd like to just pause to reflect that we're gathered here today on the unceded ancestral territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, who lived and worked here from time immemorial. And I think especially in a design program where we're really interested in the meaning of place, it's worth just pausing to reflect for a moment what it means to be an uninvited guest on somebody else's land, or on land that's not our own at the very least. I'll invite those of us who are joining from not here at UBC to think about the historic traditions in their own geography. And so we'll just take a moment to reflect on that, and then we'll get into the agenda. Okay. So this portion of the evening will last about 40 minutes, so about 35, I suppose. Just want to talk a little bit about what our motivations are here at BDES, why we're so excited about what we're doing in the program, and give you a kind of overview of what to expect so you can make a good decision about whether you want to apply. We'll have about a half an hour set aside for questions and answers. I imagine some of you may have questions in particular about the admission process, so we set aside time for that. At 7:10, we're going to walk over to the Macmillan building at 2357 Main Mall. It's a little more than a 5-minute walk from here. That's where the BDES studios are, and we'll get into what that means in a moment. We've got some pizza there for you if you're hungry. If you're not now, you might be by the time we get done with this part of the day. And so you can tour the design studios and meet some BDES students, which might be of interest. I probably should have started by saying that I'm Joe Damon. I'm the chair of the BDES program, as well as an associate professor here at UBC, where I've been for about 14 years. And I am a really big advocate for BDES program. And I'll get into why that is, but it's a fantastic program. And I'm excited to see you all here with your interest in the program itself. So let's see if I can make this advance. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with what is design, why it's important. That's basically our motivations. Why study it at BDES at UBC? We'll get into student life. I've invited some BDES students here who are members of DESIS, which is the Design Undergraduate Society. They're seated up at the front, and so we'll bring them up during Q&A. You all can wave just for a moment. Yeah, there they are. Very good. And as I mentioned, we'll look a little bit at post-BDES career opportunities, what it might prepare you for, and then talk about the application process, and then go to the Q&A. So let's get into it. So what is this thing, design, and why do we do it? Well, I think we can say that design is how we shape the environment around us. And this is especially important right now in industrialized countries. We spend upwards of 90% of our time indoors. And every single one of those spaces has been designed in one way or another. And so this is a really pervasive part of everyday life. And even when we're outside, increasingly, one could argue that with carbon emissions going over 400 parts per million now, every corner of the globe has been subject to human intervention, interference, or design of one form or another. And how we choose to kind of approach that, acknowledge it, and move forward are design questions. So design actually differentiates humans from other species. There are some animals like beavers build dams, but they don't generally do it after their material conditions of survival have been met, whereas humans go on designing long after we meet our basic material needs. So you might see these arrowheads behind me as being indicative of kind of instrumental design for something that kind of enabled people to hunt or flay animals. But it turns out that actually a lot more of these were ceremonial objects long after we had met the kind of conditions for material survival. So in that, we are different from other species. But at the same time, design connects humans to other species in really deep and irrevocable ways. And so I think it's here at BDES, we really look at design as being for not just for humans, but for all species, and looking at humans as interrelated inextricably with other groups of living and even inanimate parts of the globe. So design responds to practical concerns. We need shelter. Actually, as animals, we're poorly adapted to a wide range of climates. Most animals can live in much broader range of climates than humans can. We need kind of shelter to survive in many places in Canada, certainly. At the same time, design embodies our highest aspirations. And so much like the kind of comment on continuing to design well after our kind of material survival is met, we could look at things like medieval churches as an attempt to get closer to God, using structures to actually kind of rise up and embody our highest aspirations. And although we may practice religion in different ways now, we can still see the kind of symbolic nature of what we do right here on the UBC campus. We build not just to kind of provide shelter, but to express our highest aspirations. And for this, it's an almost endlessly interesting kind of set of concerns. So the global building stock is set to double by 2050. We have to do this as a matter of ethical concern because we don't have enough housing. And we see that reflected in high housing prices across Canada and in many cities around the world. So we need more housing. Simple supply and demand says that we have to build more. And that means it has a big impact. And so right now, the built environment produces 40% of global anthropogenic carbon emissions. That's to say human-caused emissions. 40% are from our buildings and landscapes. And we might think a lot about the kind of energy efficiency of transportation, but that's only about 25%. It's our buildings as a single category have a huge role to play in the future of the planet. And that means as designers, we're still kind of part of the problem. We're using a lot of materials and emitting a lot of carbon, but it also means that we're part of the solution because we can have a really dramatic impact on the future of the planet by approaching our buildings in the right way. Beyond that, our buildings, landscapes, and cities hold our cultural memory. So it's in a really significant way, we can look at what we aspire to achieve as a culture. We can see it reflected in our buildings and landscapes. And so beyond the kind of practical and purposive aspects, this is a really important part of how we expressed our best attributes as humanity. And so all that's to say that designers will play a catalytic role in determining the future of the planet. We already play this role, but it's only going to become more so as we kind of continue to build buildings to house everybody equitably. And so at BDES, we're concerned with how we approach the design of buildings, the design of landscapes, and the designs of our urban environments, because all these things are interrelated. So we're a transdisciplinary program that looks at the built environment writ large, and it's a really exciting place to be. I have to say, it's what gets me up every morning. I'm excited to go to work because there's endless need for really great thinkers in this space, and all of you as students can play a role in that. And so I want to shift now to say like, okay, that's it for design, but you could do that almost anywhere. And some of you may, and that's good too. Why study it at UBC? Well, what I'd like to say first and foremost is we have excellent students here. So you will be part of a community that's actually quite small for a design program. So we're only about 250 undergraduate students across 4 years. So it's about 60 odd students per year. It's actually a few less than that. And those students were a very selective program. We're actually not as big as I would like to be. It kind of breaks my heart because we actually have to turn away a lot of qualified students every year. We'll get into the numbers later. But what that does mean is, as a selective program, the people who are here, your classmates, are really well accomplished, intelligent, hardworking, and it's a great cohort year after year. It's really supportive of each other. We have a really accomplished faculty, and I'm not talking about myself here so much as my colleagues, maybe also me, but I'd like to say that we've assembled a really world-leading faculty who take on design from a kind of, I wouldn't say an ideological bent, but we have a shared commitment to using design to make the built environment a more fair, equitable, and sustainable place. And I can say that just about across every colleague I have in the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture, that's the home for the BDES program, is committed, maybe in different ways. Everybody has their own flavor, but it really is true that everyone is kind of pulling toward the same goal of fair, just, and equitable, sustainable built fabric. And you can see that reflected in the research that's done here. So as you know, UBC is a global, it's called an R1 or research university. We've got really exciting research projects that faculty are involved with. We're all around the world addressing climate change in the built environment in significant ways, looking at the kind of equitable use of housing across Canada, collaborating with other units at UBC to accomplish things like the solar decathlon project down in the lower left. Often these actually result in built projects in the world where our research we can really try it out in real world contexts. So we use, as I mentioned, transdisciplinary design methods. So that's to say we really try to integrate across units and take advantage of our place here at UBC, which is a really unique opportunity because there's just tremendous research going on across the university here. And it's a real opportunity that we try to take advantage of. We're informed by contemporary design. So some of what we do may not look like the houses that you're used to. Sometimes we're pushing at conventional notions of beauty and really trying to kind of push hard at what that might mean. So we're informed by contemporary design. We engage with collaborative pedagogies, which is just to say that we really seek to kind of approach design as an inherently collaborative endeavor. So sometimes in the popular imagination, an architect is a lone individual expressing their vision in a kind of heroic way. You may have read The Fountainhead by Ayn Rand. Maybe nobody reads that anymore, but suffice to say that the idea of a lone architect operating alone to express a vision is really like well in the past, if it ever existed at all. And I think what we acknowledge now is that design happens through collaborative teams. And so we've really taken that on in the way we offer the curriculum as well. So we have a lot of joint projects. Hello? Just kidding. We engage a lot of hands-on experiential learning. So we do site visits. We go to building sites. We'll in various classes, we really do try to get out into the world because we find it's a really meaningful way to, as much as I can say that we really focus on creating dynamic classroom experiences. Sometimes the most memorable learning happens outside the classroom. But we do have state-of-the-art facilities. So we just opened a brand new wood shop in the chemical and biological engineering building, which is a really exciting place that brings some really cutting-edge fabrication tools. And we've got 3D printers, laser cutters, and a whole host of design tools to help realize our vision, whether it begins with a hand sketch, goes into the computer, and then is expressed in kind of physical nature. You can see some examples there of some of these kind of exciting tools that we have to use. This is from a second-year design media class. And we also have, this is actually at the Center for Advanced Wood Processing. So as I mentioned, UBC is a really exciting place. And so we take advantage of these facilities, not just within BDES, but this is what's called a KUKA robot. It's a 5-axis machine tool that can cut and go from a computer file to kind of sculpt things out of solid wood at the Center for Advanced Wood Processing. And so we lead workshops over there sometimes. And all that means that there's tremendous opportunity and a really exciting and rigorous design program. But I think what makes BDES really special and what sets it apart in a certain way is the kind of supportive community of students. I've been the chair here for about 1.5 years now, and I have been so struck during that time at how amazing this community is, how it supports, the students support each other. They're really committed to the cause. I think, like the faculty, many of the students are also kind of deeply committed to kind of approaching the built environment in a way that makes things fair for everybody. And so I've actually asked some of the students to make a video, and they just sent it over this morning. I've only seen it once, and I'll see if I can get it to play. So this was created by the Design Student Undergraduate Society, or DESIS. And let's see if hopefully, oh, hang on a second. I've got to turn on the audio here. So if we go to, yeah, HDMI 2. Oh. Let's see if that goes. There we go. Yeah.
Be a student at TESOL. I'm the videographer and graphic designer at thesis, and today we'll be interviewing some students. Let's go. Hey, I'm here with.
My name is Liam, I'm a 40 student in BDES and also VP internal office.
I heard that you did co-op last year. Do you mind sharing us your experience in co-op and what did you do typically?
I think I was pretty fortunate because my co-op experience was really great. Day-to-day basis, it honestly kind of varied, which I think was pretty cool. Some days I got to like work on 3D models, other days I helped produce drawing packages, and some days I even got to do site visits. So it was really fun.
Cool. When you're working in co-op, do you find there's a huge difference between learning in PS and working?
There was a lot of things that I kind of had to learn on the job. So a lot of them being like zoning, code bylaws, the more technical kind of information. But I think once again, I was really lucky because at this firm, there was a lot of room for like creative input. So there was actually good amount of, like, I had a good amount of chances to be able to apply and have creative, thinking process we learned with theirs.
Now, I'm here with.
I'm here, so the active of S's.
I heard that in second semester of our third year, you went on exchange in Australia. How was it?
I absolutely loved it. I went to Melbourne, so University of Melbourne. Yeah, it was a wonderful experience and it got to meet so many people and so many things.
Is there any memorable experience you'd like to share during your time abroad in Australia?
I thought that it was really cool to see the different school city, the way they taught and work things very different from us. Also, it's like super cool to see how different they're.
Do you think it's worth it? Opportunity for architecture students to go?
100%. Like I'd say if they have to can, they.
I'm here with Edwina, and I'm a fourth-year PS student, and I'm also the president of TESS. So, Edwina, I know a lot of students, including me, who are in this interview are part of this. So, is there any clubs other than thesis?
TESS is the biggest student club or organization under SALA, but there is also a lot of other architectural clubs like Nomads, Island, and Fafa.
Do you mind sharing your typical role and responsibilities with us?
My main goal is obviously try to connect you guys into the broader youth community as SALA is already a pretty small program. Reach out to people outside of architecture and try to connect and gain more connections throughout the school.
So, what do you really like the most about being part of this and other student initiatives?
Definitely having a really close community. We are a really small program, so everyone's very close. We organize initiatives and events throughout the year. We are able to connect first, second, third people peers together. So I find that really interesting.
All right, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Now I'm here with.
Anthony,
No, you're third year. Would you like to share experience so far studying in this program?
I think I've had a really great experience so far. I feel that BS is a really great program to explore your creative capabilities and you get to know everyone really well, tight knit part of the program. So you get to know all your classmates really well. And I think that it's a great environment where you feel supported by both your peers and faculty.
How would you describe your learning environment in general? Is there any difficulties?
Being that there's a lot of work, you definitely have to, it's a learning curve, getting to know how to manage and work through projects all the time, especially through communication. But otherwise, I think it's like a very healthy working environment, with lots of resources to for you to feel supported and navigating those things if you're uncomfortable. I don't think there's anything I felt that's been.
Is there any tips you'd like to share to prospective students?
Do your best to be honest in your work. I think that really helped me find that and like express myself in my work was trying to be honest with like what I prefer, like what my style is, kind of way to incorporate like your own interests and things into the work that you do is gonna make your work better.
The interview with the students were helpful. Make sure to follow us on Instagram and also stay tuned and check out our SALA website for further application requirements and deadlines. And we wish you all good luck.
Okay, let's hear it for the students. Thank you for that. I really couldn't make the case for BDES better than the students themselves because they really do have a kind of amazing community here. So you heard from the Design Undergraduate Society. Many of them are here tonight. We also have, these were some of the names mentioned. NOMAS is the National Organization for Minority Architecture Students. So that's alive and well here at SALA. Also, we have a group called FAFA for a Feminist Architecture, and you can see the link there if you want to check that out. And then ILANS is the Indigenous Landscape Architecture and Network of Design Students. So lots of student groups. We express our culture through those groups, and they play a really important role in the school. So I think you can find a pretty wide range of ways to get involved as a student here. So that's a bit about student life. Some of you may be wondering, like, what is the curriculum? Like, what do we actually study? And there is a lot of study. So BDES is a really rigorous program. Design, we're not in it because it's easy. We do these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard, and they're really meaningful. So what that looks like, this is a kind of a general layout of the classes that you can expect to take. And we won't go through this in excruciating detail, but just to say across the top in blue are the design studios for the most part. The first one, design thinking, is not a studio, but the heart of the program, kind of like the kitchen, so to speak, is this thing called the design studio. And that refers to both the place from which that video was shot, where the interviews took place in the design studio, which is just a big open room that has some plotters, printers, but that's like where the design happens. And that's the core of the program. So you'll pretty much, after the first year, you'll take, it's also the biggest source of credits in the program. So you'll have between 48 and 51 of your overall credits will come from these design studios. That's the sequence that starts in the beginning of the second year and goes right through to the end. Then you'll have 15 credits in history and theory. That's in light green. You have 12 credits of technology. There's an opportunity to take a bit more if you have a kind of particular interest in any particular area. We have electives. This is also all on the SALA website if you'd like to see it. I say SALA. When I say that, I mean the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture, which is the kind of broader school within which the undergraduate BDES program lives. So after technology, you get 9 credits of design media. And so that's basically just like the tools that we use to kind of create the plans, sections, elevations, and renderings of design, architecture, and landscape architecture. And then we have a minimum of 3 credits of professional development that is kind of places where you can either be engaged in cooperative design education, or a class actually that I teach to 4th-year students called Entrepreneurship and Ethics in Design, which is just a really broad-ranging course on different ways to apply what you've learned in design skills toward kind of undertakings of your own making. So, and then there's this category of other, which is we don't really need to go into, but there's a few other options there. So what this looks like year by year, this is looking from left to right, starting with year 1. We probably don't need to go too much into this, except to say we have some broad distribution requirements. So we think of design as being a really effective lens through which to view the liberal arts. And so as a result, in the first year, we actually require that students take some reading and writing courses, in addition to the measured architectural drafting. So you learn the kind of fundamental skills. We don't expect you to have much in the way of those skills coming into the program, but we want to leave you the first year with a really solid understanding of what design means and how to do it. And then the studio sequence starts at the beginning of year 2 with S201. You'll learn some history. We'll look at site analysis and planning, how you approach a site, not as a blank, clean slate, but rather as a kind of area freighted with historic meaning and ecological meaning. And then as you go through the program, we'll go from sort of site and context to landscapes to buildings, finally in your 4th year to urban systems. So we're thinking about how it all comes together. And then you'll have an opportunity in your final semester to do an independent project of your own making, where you can really kind of choose to concentrate in one area. We give students a lot of leeway, and they do some really great projects. So if you're interested, you can come to our thesis reviews in the spring. Happens around late March, early April, and it's really amazing what our students are able to accomplish. Some really exciting projects. So that's kind of the outlay of what you can expect. I imagine you might have some questions, and we'll make time for those at the end. I also just wanted to mention a few of our extracurricular programs, because we much like, we have student life in the curriculum, but there's actually a lot of really great opportunities within BDES to kind of explore the world as a designer, because we think that's an important part of design education. These aren't mandatory, but there are opportunities to participate. So this is some students at a study abroad in Japan a few years ago. We do design build projects. So this is a kind of growing area of interest. This was actually a project I supervised. You may have seen this on campus, right at the center of campus at Maine Mall and University. So this was built, it's all reclaimed cedar from a housing development that was going up. They were going to chip it all up. And we had them, actually, the developer gave us the timber and we had it sawn. And then the students built this project, kind of center for relaxation at the center of campus. So we do a lot of hands-on experiential learning through design build. And there's normally at least 1 to 2 of those projects going on every year. Sometimes they're actually with the master's program, and BDES students can participate with master's students. So it's interesting kind of opportunity to learn with some upper level students as well. This is another one that happened at the Powell Street Festival in East Vancouver a few years ago, supervised by Mari Fujita. This was a student design booth at Vancouver Design Week. That was the Azure booth that was done by some students a few years back. So study abroad comes in kind of 2 types. There's the study abroads that we looked at some of the picture that typically occur during the summer. Those are, we normally have 1 to 2 of those a year. Again, you might be paired with some graduate students. There have been BDES only trips or majority BDES. But another form that takes, those are normally say 2 to 3 weeks, and they typically happen in the summer. But on top of this thing called coordinated international exchange, and that's done through UBC, and it's a network of 17 universities that have standing agreements with UBC where you can just go enroll around the world. We'll look at a map in a moment. And it really does make it pretty painless. You're actually not just limited to those 17 universities, but it's much easier if you choose one of these because the path, the credits all sort of automatically transfer. I might have a map in another slide or two. So this is one of the sort of summertime, this was some of the students documenting their summer trip to Japan in 2024. And there's some slides of what they get up to. And this was a trip to Sardinia that was, again, some graduate and BDES students seen here drinking lemonade, I think. Yeah. Yeah, the 17 partner institutions are in Asia, Australia, and Europe. Again, you're not limited to those, but that is actually, those are kind of the ones that are easiest to get to. And I think it might be a little hard to see, but you can see a number of them in Australia, Europe, and Asia as well. So we also have this program called Co-op, which is a really great opportunity. Again, not mandatory. Many students choose to exercise it, but it's a way to kind of get placed within a design firm. Could be a landscape architecture firm, could be an architecture firm. Some students go to urban design firms. Many go in Vancouver, some go across Canada. To leading firms in Toronto, and they get a really great opportunity. You get a designation on your transcript when you graduate that says you went through co-op. That requires, I think, 3 terms of co-op. But either way, even if you just do it for 1 term, it's a really great way to establish a relationship with a firm as a student, so that when you get out, you have that already kind of, the relationship's already established. So it's fair to ask also, as I hope many of you will be thinking about, not just what happens while you're here, why you would come here, but also what kind of career could it turn into? And so I'll speak just to a minute, speak to that for just a minute, and then we'll get to the Q&A. So design education is actually really great training for the knowledge economy. And so, in fact, while many of our students go into architecture, landscape architecture, urban design, many of them actually go into related disciplines. It's really fantastic training. If you're interested in being an entrepreneur, you'll learn skills to kind of take an idea and realize it through all the way to make it a kind of compelling proposition. So we can look at it not just as training for kind of narrow design disciplines, but really for the entire knowledge economy. So you'll be engaged in project-focused, collaborative, hands-on experiential learning. You're going to learn to create compelling visions that address global issues. And you'll have a lot of practice presenting proposals to broad audiences of peers, professors, and professionals. So hopefully you can see how that would translate well outside what we might consider the kind of narrow design disciplines to a whole range of applications. So many of our students do go on. If you're interested in becoming a licensed architect, I want to be clear, just so that you're clear about it, before you enter the program. Licensure in architecture in North America currently requires postgraduate study. So as an undergraduate, if you study in the BDES program, you'll be really well set up to enter a professional program, a Master of Architecture, a Master of Landscape Architecture, or a Master of Urban Design or Master of Planning. And that will get you to the point where you can actually sit for a test to become a licensed architect. When you get out of BDES, you won't have the credentials yet to do that. Many of our students do go work in firms for a few years before they go on to a Master of Architecture. But I want to be really clear about what licensure requires. That's to say, to call yourself to practice as a professional architect requires graduate study. BDES is excellent training for that, but BDES alone won't prepare you for that. So you have to kind of go on to typically a 3-year professional program. What it will provide you great training for, as I mentioned, is a design career in a whole host of disciplines that don't require further accreditation or joining a professional organization. Things like film, fashion, industrial design, set design, graphic design, furniture design, game design, user interface, user experience design, and as I mentioned, entrepreneurship. So there's a whole host of ways to apply it. Many of our students have gone on to really great careers in a lot of these areas. So as I mentioned, BDES is a great first step toward professional practice that requires completion of the BDES program and then going through typically a 2 to 3 year graduate program, either at UBC. We have a lot of our students continue on at UBC. Many of them also go on to leading programs around the world. We send students to the US, Europe, leading design schools, Harvard, MIT, Columbia, Yale. Also in Europe to Danish School of Design, the Netherlands. They go all around the world. And then after that, you can pass the provincial licensing exam if you want to be here in BC as a licensed architect or landscape architect. So I imagine that a few of you may have questions about the application process. And so I'll just give a kind of high level of what that involves. It's basically, you can find all this is taken from the BDES website. So if you go on and type in admissions in BDES at SALA, you'll get to this. And so there's a kind of pull down menu. And what you'll see is that the application is due on January 15th. Is that the case again this year? It is January 15th. So there is a application fee associated because we actually have to review every application pretty carefully. And you're going to apply not only to the BDES program, but you're going to apply to UBC generally. As a rule, our standards are a fair bit higher in BDES than the standard UBC guidelines. So chances are, if you get into the program, you won't have trouble with the UBC requirements, but I should mention that. And you can get the kind of general UBC application process is obviously up on the UBC website as well. So our BDES specific application involves 3 components. There's a video interview, and this is about 1.5 minutes. We'll ask you a question. Once you sign up, you'll get a prompt, and I think students have 15 minutes. So it's actually, we're really trying to get like your thought process. So we're not interested in you writing a research report about this. We just want to hear what's your motivation, what's a space that compels you, and then it's 1.5 minutes live video. I think they get one chance. Yeah, so if you get really mixed up, you get a second cut at it. But we're really kind of trying to get an unfiltered view of what is your interest in design and how do you look at it. Then we have this thing called the creative test or creative challenge. And these are 3 prompts where we'll ask you to design something. And it changes a little bit every year, but it's a kind of spatial design proposition. And again, you'll have more time. This one is basically, once you go into the admissions portal, you have until it's due on January 15th to complete it. Is that right, Malika? January 31st. So you've got basically from now until January 31st to complete that. These are intended to be kind of like enjoyable design exercises where you can kind of like let us know a little bit about your design skills and the sort of spaces you're interested in designing. They won't require much beyond a few sheets of 8.5-inch by 11 paper and you know, your phone to document it and upload it. And then lastly, we ask for a CV or resume in which we're just trying to get a sense of who you are as a kind of complete individual, what you've kind of managed to accomplish and that sort of thing. And then we'll look at your GPA or your transcript as part of the application process through UBC. So those are the main components for the supplemental materials that have to go to BDES by January 31st. And so as I mentioned in the video interview, we're just trying to get to know you. A succinct personal response specific to your own experience is great. You don't need to be an expert on architecture and design. You don't need to have traveled to the Louvre or the you know, notable works of architecture. We're asking you about things that you might experience every week. So it's don't be too put off by that. And in the design challenge, we're looking for a kind of compelling response that indicates your passions and the kind of designer you are. There are no right or wrong answers, which can be a little bit unsettling if you're used to some other disciplines. But things you might want to think about are, what is the kind of creative spatial thinking that would produce a compelling space? How is a space organized? So compositional elements, you know, that you might sort of like, as you're doing a drawing, you might think about the composition of that drawing. So we're looking for the same thing in spatial design. Craft, so the quality of workmanship. So how much attention to detail are you paying in what you're kind of the way you're developing your thinking? And then lastly, and I'd encourage you, this one sometimes gets lost, and I can understand why. You know, applicants often spend a lot of time trying to kind of craft a space, but thinking about the layout of the images on the page is as important as what's represented in the images themselves. So how you kind of compose the images together on the page is also an example of design. And so we're looking at that when you submit your materials. We're kind of looking at how you kind of present the work. And so taking care about even the lighting of the photos. If you're taking a photo of a drawing, making sure that it's you know, you're kind of correcting white balance and things. You can do so much on your phone toward that. So it doesn't really require specialized software or anything like that. But we do look at composition in a few different ways that way. And then lastly, in the CV or resume, we're just trying to learn a little bit more about you, any awards or accolades that you've won, your work experience. If you've done any volunteer work, we'd love to know about that. We're always interested in students that are going to contribute to the project or to the class in ways that are not just academic, but starting clubs, you know, like what do you do on your own? And then travel and hobbies, anything else that makes you you, we'd like to know about. So that's what we're looking at in the CV. So if you have questions about the process, you can email us at des@sala.ubc.ca, and that will reach Malika Kanasheva, who's here, the program coordinator. So our door is always open if you have questions. It is a kind of, you know, a somewhat demanding application process, but it is more than a somewhat demanding program. We believe strongly in what we do. We're driven and motivated because we think it's really important, and we're interested in students that have that same drive and motivation, because design is its own reward in many ways. So if this is the kind of thing that you would do, you know, whether you're in a class for credit or not, we want to hear from you. We think it's a really engaging thing to be involved with. So as much as I would like to be able to accept all qualified students, due to our student-faculty ratio and the small size of the program, we simply aren't able to accept every qualified applicant. And it really breaks my heart every year to have to say this to students. We only accept 50 students in year one. And last year we had about 700 applicants for those 50 spots. So it's if you do apply, and I encourage all of you to apply, and we have to say, I'm really sorry, but it's not going to work this year, please don't take it personally. It doesn't mean you're not a great designer. I'm sure that we're missing lots of really good designers every year. We do accept 15 additional students at the start of year two as transfers. So if you don't get into that 50 in the first year, you can enroll either at UBC, SFU, or a whole host of other colleges post-secondary institutions in Vancouver and across Canada, we do ask that you fulfill what we require at the end of year one, but you can do that in other places. And it actually is less competitive in the second year. So I just want you to take heart. If we can't extend an offer of admission, you do have that option, provided, and this is a big caveat, you do need to make sure that you're meeting the year one requirements in BDES at whatever institution you're in to apply for admission as a transfer in year two, whether that's at UBC or another institution. And we've had students that do that at SFU, at Langara, sometimes even Douglas and other places. So this is, we'll see if this works. I think I might break the whole thing here, but, oh. Nope. I think I've broken it. Sorry, we had a, maybe we gotta stop the share.
If we took some,
How about that? Sorry about that. We had a promo video that, yeah, the laptop has got a mind of its own. That didn't work.
We all dream of making a mark on the world.
Good gracious. This is really gone shy.
Power to really do it.
Sorry.
The new Bachelor.
Okay. I think, yeah, I think that's our cue to move to the Q&A, actually. Yeah. In fact, I was hoping to play a 1-minute promotional video that UBC made about the program, but we're going to have to leave it there. And so what I'm going to ask Malika to do is come up with the laptop. I think I've got to share the screen again. This is my worst nightmare, is trying to do this stuff in public. All right. Now, if we do this, did that work? I'm not sure it did. Yeah. Anyway, they don't really need to see the Q&A on the Zoom. I think it's just a static question. Only one question on Zoom. Okay, so let's turn it. How we do on time? We went about 5 minutes over, but that's not too bad. I guess we'd like to take. We have a Zoom audience, and so we're going to take questions from them. But I guess there's only one question there. So if you have a question, raise your hand, and we've got a microphone. We've got somebody right there. Malika will come around with a microphone so that everybody can hear you. Because if you have a question, probably other people have it as well.
So, for the first or second year student at UBC, would you have to completely reapply to UBC to join the Bachelor of Design program?
You're saying if you're not a first or second year. You would not have to correct me if I'm wrong here, Malika, but do you want to take this, Malika? Maybe it's better if you do, because I'll probably get it wrong. I think you've got to turn your mic on.
okay, so if you are a student at UBC, let's say second year or third year student, and you want to apply to this, you're not reapplying to UBC, you're transferring. It's a different process. So you're not doing the first part, you start immediately with the supplemental test. If you're at Langara, let's say, yes, you are applying from basically from the start. Yes. You don't have to be a second year student specifically. You can be fourth year student at UBC, let's say, you are doing arts in fourth year, and you can still apply to be this club to year two only. So we're not doing year 3, year 4, year 2 is the maximum you can go. Yeah.
I think it is worth noting, though, that you would need to, you will extend your time at UBC, because if you come in as a fourth year student, you'll still be starting the kind of BDES credits. I mean, we might be able to give credit for some electives that meet requirements, but it would be adding to your overall time here. Yeah, it's a good question.
I was just wondering if you had any recommendations for like a second choice if you were unable to get into BDES and we wanted to transfer second. And then also, would it be possible to take any first year BDES courses if you were in the program, or is it restricted only to BDES students?
Those are great questions. So I'll start with the second one first, and then I'm going to hand over the first one to Malika. The second question is, do you have to be enrolled in BDES to take BDES courses? And the short answer is we offer, especially in the first and second years, we have open enrollment courses. They tend to be very popular in the university, I think, because they're really kind of dynamic, interesting. They help you interpret the world around you. We reserve spots for BDES students in those, but you'll be in them with some other students. And those are really, really fun and enlightening classes. The studios, however, we do restrict to BDES students. And most upper level BDES courses, we have to reserve for BDES students also, because we're really kind of focused on some issues that we want to make sure that we can really get kind of in depth, and it requires some of the training you have gone through. So the answer is yes at the start. So if you don't get into it, you can definitely take some of those kind of design thinking and other courses that are aimed at open enrollment, but not into the design studio, and generally speaking, not into the upper level electives. And the first part of the question was, if you don't get into BDES, what other programs would we recommend? And that one's harder, so that's why I'm giving it to Malika.
So we do not have formal recommendations of where to go if you're not admitted to BDES. But when you apply to UBC, if you want to get into BDES, you're choosing it as your first choice. You cannot do second choice BDES. It has to be your first choice. And second choice, usually what we see is arts, sometimes sciences, and rarely engineering. With engineering, it's a bit harder to get into BDES sometimes because they have their own requirements, and it will clash with BDES open enrollment classes. So the easiest, I would say, would be arts. Because you can also, if you don't get in BDES on your second try, you can just stay in arts and do visual arts, which is would be the closest, I guess, to design.
Right. Yeah.
I just want to say that I really appreciated the presentation. I thought it was very informative. So
I'm so glad. Thank you.
yeah, I just had a question for you that's maybe a little bit niche. I've already completed a 2-year architectural drafting program out in U of T in Fraser Valley. And I was wondering if I wanted to transfer into BDES, would I have to start from like first year, or is there a way that I can figure out if any of my courses that I've already done, like for example, like design theory or studio courses, is there a way for me to figure out if any of those transfer over so I can maybe kind of go in at the second year level or third year level?
Yeah, that is a slightly niche question. It's a totally relevant one, and I understand. I mean, like off the cuff, I could say like clearly we wouldn't ask you to repeat, measured architectural drafting because you obviously would meet that. We'd have to look. That's done on a kind of case by case basis. But we have no interest in making you repeat things for the purpose of repeating them. And so we'd rather have you kind of apply that to kind of other places to extend your own learning. So it's a little hard. We can't really answer every question before students are admitted just because the applicant pool is so large, but just know that we're committed to kind of recognizing where a student has met the kind of requirements. We will recognize that. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll just go, BC transfer guide website.
True.
And check what institution you're coming from and choose UBC as your institution 2, and just see what courses have you done with it already. And if you do not see your course from, let's say, SEQ, it doesn't mean that it hasn't been evaluated. It might be in the process, so you can email me, and there's a salad. I can just take a look if we are in the process. So yeah, BC transfer guide would be very helpful.
I think, Malika, should we take a question from Zoom? I think, yeah. Can I see it right here? Need my glasses.
One question.
Okay.
So, I had a question about whether or not BDES would kind of directly teach you like softwares like Reddit or Rhino, anything like that, or will it stay with the hands-on experience, like try and keep you in that, because with technology nowadays, we're trying to direct architects to start using those more. I feel like the hands-on is kind of getting forgotten. And then second question is, for Emily Carr, is our interior design, is it hard to go into that and then go back into architecture? Or would you say that it's fine, like you can do that and it's not hard to go back?
Interesting questions. I would say that the two are definitely, I mean, the design process is the design process. And so I would say that there are definitely a lot that would translate from interior design, not everything. But I wouldn't say, you know, you're somehow like it has nothing to do with it. And, you know, so yes, it has a lot to do with it. And there would probably be some transfer credit that would apply. The question about teaching software is a really interesting one. As a general rule, we do teach a bit of software in course like design media because we think it's a really important kind of aspect of expressing a design vision. At the same time, we do require still a lot of like actually hand drawing and model making because we feel like those skills, although they're kind of like somewhat in danger of sort of like, you know, falling by the wayside, they're actually really immediate and direct ways to develop a design. So in terms of teaching software, I would say we do it toward the beginning a bit more to make sure everybody has a skill set they can draw on. But we also kind of require a certain amount of kind of willingness of students to take on the kind of software. You know, I think software is very different than when I was going through design school. I think it was still kind of, let's just say that there's such a range of programs out there that we kind of enable students or we don't exactly require them to go out, but we give them the, you know, students can have the initiative to go out and find the thing that will enable them to kind of express their vision. And we'll provide some kind of basics about how to approach it, but it's more a kind of almost meta about how to approach design media strategically as a way to kind of like express conceptual ideas rather than kind of teaching the nuts and bolts of the program, which believe me, you don't want me to teach that to you anyway, because you probably learn it faster, you know, by Googling what you're after. So it's in a way that the kind of pace of evolution of these softwares is so fast that what we're really interested is in teaching the concepts behind it that change on a kind of different scale and are almost, I don't want to say universally applicable, but will enable you to kind of engage in an intelligent way with a whole range of softwares, if that makes sense. So, okay, we're gonna turn to one of these. Are you gonna read it out or yeah?
Questions here
Yeah.
and a few questions that
Yeah.
have been already answered
Okay.
in the Q&A. But if you're interested, we can just maybe quickly go over them so that you also know the answer, just very quickly. Let's see what is there. Okay, about portfolio, it's a very common question. We do not require portfolio, so there's no option for you to upload the portfolio. So you cannot email me the portfolio. I cannot look at everything. So only the things we're asking you to upload, like CV, supplemental, video interview, that's it. So no portfolio.
The supplemental creative challenge takes the place of the portfolio. That's where we're kind of finding your design skills.
Okay, so lots of questions about GPA. So UBC might say it's, the minimum is 70, but you are not gonna get in with 70 for sure. So we cannot say what is the minimum because it changes every year, but at least 85 would be sort of relatively competitive, but
I want to be a little careful about that because in some rare instances, if we've had a supplemental test that's so exciting,
yeah,
it's so compelling, it could kind of overcome a GPA that maybe wouldn't otherwise, but you know,
it can,
it's-
yeah. But still, like 70 is a bit, it's tough with 70.
It's just the numbers. It's kind of a numbers
Yeah.
game. Yeah.
Okay, specific high school course, we do not ask for anything specific, but if you have history or geography classes in grade 11, 12, that's great, but we do not require those. And
Maybe one more and then we
That's
go back to the room or
it,
just-
I think,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
The rest is how to transfer all on the website.
Got a question up here, it looks like.
You guys had mentioned about study abroad trip to Japan in the summer, so I'm just wondering what topics got covered in there, because I'm doing some one at the Wilson School of Design this coming up summer. So it's like thinking, oh, it should be good to like keep on those topics.
Yeah.
they don't really like to learn the classroom program?
Yeah, that's a little hard for me to answer because I wasn't on the trip, but I know they looked at a lot of temples and they ate a lot of noodles. And I don't mean to be facetious, but I mean, like, it was both looking at some historical forms and also contemporary Japanese architecture. A lot of really interesting design coming out of there. So it's harder for me to speak to the kind of like particular themes that they were taking on. But I wonder, was anybody on the Japan trip here? Yeah, it was I guess a couple of years ago. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't speak more specifically, but I know they had a good time. Yeah. And I'm sure you will too. It's an amazing place. Yeah.
You mentioned the co-op programs.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, this specifically has like some relationships with like architecture firms, or if it's like completely up to the students to like find their own firm and like apply to it. And you also mentioned it's a 3 semester long or something like that.
Yeah, the co-op that's to get the co-op designation. Malika, do you want to talk about the specifics and then I'll. Yeah, let's hear from the student. Yeah. That's better.
Yes, so I'm here right now. So students that are accepted into the co-op program after application, we get invited to this portal and we have co-op advisors that help post job applications and help our portfolios reach firms within Vancouver and Toronto and Calgary, Edmonton, and even outside of Canada. We have 4 semesters allocated to our co-op program, but you need at least a minimum of 3 to get the designation on your transcript.
But some students go as little as a single co-op term. It's just that you won't get the designation, but it's still a valuable experience. Yeah. Thank you, Tristan. Yeah, that was fantastic. Thank you. I want to come over here because you've had your hand up for a minute. Oh, this one doesn't work? Okay. You got it. I'm surprised you're not even going to keep that. You got the pool, you got it.
Thank you so much. It's a great presentation. My question was more about you mentioned about the 50 seats that you have in education.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know what makes these 50 seats or 50 students stand apart to get to their gate.
I'm gonna stand over here so the people on Zoom can see me. I'm not trying to get away. It's a great question. The short answer is we're space constrained. So it comes back to the design studio where we're going to head in a few minutes. But we only have enough space. It's actually a fire code issue. Even if we wanted to put more students in there, we couldn't do it because of kind of egress requirements. But it's not only spatial because it's also about the student to faculty ratio. It's difficult to kind of, in some other disciplines like engineering, it's quite common to have classes with 400 students and 1 professor. And that's, that works for certain disciplines, but design is kind of tricky to teach in that way. We're kind of experimenting with some models that actually enable us to scale up. But the truth is that space is in pretty short supply at UBC, and we just don't have the physical space to grow yet. We're exploring we're actually doing a program review now because the numbers, we have year after year, there's a lot of interest in studying this. And I think it's because it's so relevant. And it's it's kind of a fascinating journey. It does take a lot of work. But as much as I would love to expand the program for the immediate future, we're still kind of constrained by the space that we have. So does that answer the question?
Yeah, I'm also curious to know what makes these students really stand apart to get into that door.
That's a great question. It's a kind of, it's a difficult thing to bottle up. But for those students, I would say they tend to be really committed to the design process. They're kind of often students that would be doing this. They have been doing it, in their room before they ever did it for credit. They were just the kind of student or people that kind of looked at their environment around them and were really interested in kind of understanding more about it, were curious about it, didn't take it for granted, maybe were bothered by something. That's a great kind of way to begin. An essay would be something that frustrates you about a space, not an essay, but the video interview. What's something that you experience daily that doesn't work for you, or that's an irritant, or that you go into the space every day and it frustrates you that you can't pass somebody coming the other way. That it doesn't have the kind of way to interact with people in the way you want. So So it's hard, you know, and then a kind of sensibility about space and a kind of ability to organize space in flat, you know, in composition on the page. You know, often people have been doing things that are not necessarily architecture or landscape architecture, but you know, maybe designed a piece of furniture that they used, and it might be out of cardboard and, you know, tape. But you know, generally speaking, they're students that really are interested in this in a kind of deep and abiding way, not just for the purpose of getting into the program. I don't know if that helps, but it's kind of hard to, you know, we have a lot of different students too. And we're very open, you know, we're trying to kind of put together a class that gets along and kind of complements each other as well. So, yeah.
So is
Yeah.
that okay if we take more questions and wrap up here and move to the
Absolutely.
building work action studies?
Yeah.
Show the building, have some pizza and go home to
That sounds great. That sounds great. So a couple more questions and then we'll go. There's pizza over there as well. It's gonna get cold if we don't get over there. So yeah.
Hi, you
Hi.
were saying how when somebody completes the BS program, we continue to masters in architecture, would you be able to explain a little bit what that would look like? And say someone isn't interested in continuing to masters in architecture, what jobs related to architectural design options would there be with just the bachelor's in architecture?
Great question. So I'll start with the first part, which is like if a student does complete BDes and decide they want to go on to get sort of like to professional education so that they could become a licensed architect, a licensed landscape architect, or an urban planner. Typically, they would often students will take a year or two to work in a firm just to make sure that they kind of really want to do that. And our students, although they're not licensed, firms employ a whole range of, you know, you could go to work as an intern paid in a position for one of those firms before you ever kind of go onto a graduate degree. So many times students will work for a few years. Some students in their fourth year actually apply to a graduate program, whether at UBC, University of Toronto, or any one of, you know, other programs around the world. And we have really good success rates. Our students are really well prepared for that by the time they're done with BDes. So that would typically be a 3. If it's in architecture, it would generally be a 3. Sometimes you can kind of, if you have the right electives, you could do it in 2.5 years, but safer to kind of plan for 3 years of graduate study. And when you get out, then you fulfill your kind of licensure requirements, sort of like being a doctor. There's an internship period where you have to kind of gain the practical experience. And after you get enough hours, which typically takes a couple of years, then you can sit for the exam to become and call yourself a licensed architect or landscape architect. So that's the kind of professional route for people that want to become licensed. Many students go on, as I mentioned, to kind of other sort of related disciplines. So you could go to work. We have students that go become game designers. So you're really well set up because you have a set of skills that might help in that. Set design in theater. We have theatrical designers. We have students that work, you know, sometimes kind of switch and they might go into a whole range of other, you know, just like any kind of liberal arts education. If you go with an English degree, you might go kind of work at you know, as for a consultant or a whole range of different kind of disciplines that you can work for with this degree. So it's not so limited. We don't have great numbers for really nuanced understanding of what our students go on to do when they get out. We know that, you know, we hear from many of them, not all, but it's a pretty wide range. I would say, Malika, do we know? I mean, anecdotally, it seems like maybe a third to half go on to professional programs. I would say just based on kind of what I see, but that's back of the. I don't think we've done sort of post surveys. Yeah, it's an area we need to understand better, but what we don't hear about much are students coming back saying like, I can't get a job anywhere. They seem to be placed in really kind of like a whole range of different positions or graduate schools, and they certainly get into top ones of those. So I don't know if that answers your question, but not. Oh, you can definitely go to work for architecture firms without getting your architecture license. So you can work in the firm, and our students have a pretty good track record of kind of working in those because, you know, they have good design skills. So you can absolutely go to work at an architecture firm. I generally would say if it's something you envision spending a career at, it's probably worth going to get licensed because it just means that you'll have a kind of different set of upward mobility in a way, you know, that you can go open your own practice at some point. But for a student that doesn't want that, you know, you can certainly go work in a firm, in an architecture or landscape architecture firm without getting formally licensed. Yeah. You just can't stamp the drawings. You always have to work under a licensed architect. So, yeah. Yeah. Okay, last question. Yeah.
If the goal is to become an architect,
Yes.
then kind of like science meets art or the other way around.
Mhm.
And so there are other universities that have programs that are under the School of Science or.
Yes.
And this one's on design. Do you see that if because if we go through the design route, would it be maybe more acting on the technical skill side, like, or maybe what's the advantage of going through this program versus going to like a science type of undergrad?
Yeah. What a fascinating question. I think I worry that I'm going to try not to go down the rabbit hole on this because you can look at the basis of design programs in Europe, you know, the German kind of polytechnic model where schools of architecture historically were located in the polytechnical school versus the Beaux-Arts in France, which is a sort of liberal version. You can see it in we're actually in the School of Applied Science or in the Faculty of Applied Science. So the School of Architecture and Landscape Architecture is in the Faculty of Applied Science. So we are in a science faculty. And at the same time, we're kind of in the arts end of campus, which speaks a little bit about the kind of tensions there. But I would say it's not the case that students aren't getting any technical preparation. They do learn some structures. We have those requirements. There are other programs that are more technically focused. So I mean, we kind of view what we're doing as really trying to train the next generation of thinkers about architecture, and not just architecture, but design, especially. You know, we have a lot of students interested in architecture, but it really is kind of, you know, opportunities to study landscape or urban design as well. So I would say that it's not as simple as saying like you're not in a kind of scientific program, because we are within the Faculty of Applied Science, and certainly for the student that wants to take electives in there, it's very easy to get that kind of crunchy technical aspect. But I'm not sure. Advanced placement meaning.
BDest masters.
Yeah, well, that's true also. So our students often go into master's programs and they do get advanced placement, especially ones that have kind of taken some of those technical subjects. So it's possible, but I don't think it's quite as simple as the way you're phrasing it about like, you know, whether you would go in a kind of science-oriented program. I mean, most design programs are more or less structured the way we are here. Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Many questions on Zoom, and
Okay.
I feel like we still have questions here, but we need to wrap up in this room, and it's very optional to join us in the other building, Macmillan.
Yeah.
And while we walk there, you can ask questions on the
Sure.
way.
Yeah.
So if you have questions, you should probably come with us. If you don't, it's like, feel free to
Yeah.
go home.
Yeah, but
yeah.
come to the studios. It's a good chance to see the heart of the program. There will be students there that you can interact with, and you can ask them questions as well. Yeah.
Tell your mic.
Yeah.
Ask questions on like stats accounts, like.
Yeah. So if you're on Zoom, we're gonna wrap up here and go over to the design studios. But if you have questions, you're welcome to address them to des@sala.ubc.ca. That's des@sala.ubc.ca. Thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful night. We hope you apply. All right.
Oh, really great. I mean, it will take us 15 minutes to get there. I wish we could go some back. And like,